Okay, well here I am backstage on the Pacific Sun with the very talented Dave Burke, who's just come off stage doing a 45-minute show. Dave, thanks for hanging out.
Thank you, it's a pleasure.
They really enjoyed the show. It was great.
Yeah, it was a good mixture, you know, there was a lot of youngies there and middle-aged and oldies as well, so it was a mixed bag, but they were good. They were right onto it. Yeah.
Now, as a comedian, for those people that may not know, Dave, you're a comedian, but you started out in music as well?
Yeah, I started out with a band. I gradually formed one. I had one in the Royal Air Force in the Middle East, and then when I got back I teamed up with a keyboard player, and we were together for 10 years, and we graduated from pub level, playing in a pub 2-3 nights a week, into a classy hotel, and then we got on to what they call a Mecca circuit, which we used to get 2,000 people a night dancing, and there were 2 bands, and you worked on a revolving stage, so there was a 12-piece band, I had the quartet, and the music never stopped.
Wow.
And the big band would do an hour and I'd do half an hour, and the music would just keep going. 2,000 people a night. We did covers, we did the top 20, you know, and it was a winning formula because the kids wanted to hear the music that was on the radio.
Yeah.
And so, to me, that was as far as I could get in my musical career.
Did you find yourself telling gags in between? Like,
yeah, on the Sundays we'd do the working men's clubs up the north there, and we'd put on a band show because everybody in the band sang. And that's when I started to tell gags. And I used to go to City Varieties in Leeds, which is a well-known variety theatre. And I'd go to the Monday matinee and I'd sit on the back row with a pad and pen and I'd write down the gags from the comedian.
Yeah.
And then on the following Sunday, when I was working with the band, I'd tell the gags. Sometimes they'd laugh, sometimes they'd, oh, get off, you know. But that's when I got the taste of it.
Did you notice a big difference when you came out to Australia and you started?
Yeah, I came out actually as a musician, but I came into Adelaide, which was good. And I had a very lucky break there. I started doing pubs in Adelaide as a comedian. And a big show came into Adelaide, Harry Wren. And he had June Bronill, top of the bill, Ken and Toshi, Flat Tops, and Joe Martin, the well-known comedian, was in the show, and he pulled out because he wasn't getting paid, and they rang me up.
Because he wasn't getting paid?
Yeah, his checks were bouncing.
Oh no.
And they rang me up and said, there's a spot going in this show 5 nights a week, we'll give you $120, are you interested? I said, yeah. So I went down, did the audition.
What year was this?
This is way back in 1967.
$120?
Yeah, it was a lot of money. So I got the job in the show, and every Saturday night the lady would come down from the box office and pay me in the dressing room $120, and the other acts would laugh and think, oh God, you should be getting proper money. And I was the only one that got paid.
No way.
All the checks bounced, and it took them 2 years to get paid.
What?
Yeah. So Joe Martin got me the start. Somebody in Sydney saw me and said, we've got some work for you. Well, back in those days, in the 70s, there was so much work in the clubs.
For comedians?
I just went in and they said, what are you? Oh, British comedian, get your book out. You'd walk out of every agent with 5 bookings.
Wow. Do you remember your first ever gig where you were wholly and solely doing stand-up? Or have you always had that musical component to your act?
I've always had the music in the act, yeah. I kept the clarinet there, just to make myself different, you know. But Botany RSL in Sydney was my first show there, and you had to do 2 20-minute spots, and I had sufficient material to get through it. Some weeks you'd go good and some weeks you'd die, and you know, as a young comedian you've got to die a lot to become good, sort of thing. It's part of the apprenticeship.
Yeah. And you've well travelled too, you know, it's taken you to all parts of the globe, hasn't it, really?
Oh yeah, once I started on the ships in 1970 on the Fair Star. So that's over 40 years now I've been working ships. Because the clubs, once the breathalyzer came in, it just dropped overnight, the clubs.
Yeah.
And then videos came in, and it affected the whole business. The goose that laid the golden egg vanished.
Yeah.
You know, but for those that made money in that period, they bought houses and they were okay, you know.
Peter Dean, a mutual friend of ours, said a similar sort of thing. He said, you know, back then there was a lot of money to be had, and you made the most of it.
That's right. Yeah, it was a great circuit to work on. There was 1,200 clubs in New South Wales. Go on tour. I worked in an ice show for 3 years. We'd go off in the bush, Wagga and Dapto, and
doing an ice show.
An ice show. We'd go into a town for 3 days, and they'd break the ice up, and the staff would take it to the next town, and we'd have a day off. Well, they froze it again. It's only 4 inches deep, the ice. We had skaters, acrobats, and singers, and I was the compere. I used to have spikes in my shoes, so I didn't
So you didn't fall over?
Yeah. 3 years I worked in the ice show, and then go on tour with people like Judy Stone and Cole Joy and Johnny O'Keefe, you know, support act. And there was a lot of work. And then I was lucky, when the American acts started coming in the 70s, we had a very strong union at that time, and if an American act came in, they had to have an Australian support.
Right.
And I was in the running for that because of some contacts I had. And I worked with people like Roy Orbison. Yeah.
Roy Orbison?
Yeah.
Yeah.
2 tours with Tina Turner. You know,
Wow.
And Bobby Rydell and, you know, Burl Ives. And
Were they very were you kept apart from them, or was...
Some of them wouldn't talk to you, but some of them were nice to you, you know.
Yeah.
But the awe of working with such great names like Roy Orbison, I mean, I just stood there watching him, and he was a genius, you know.
Yeah.
And I always remember, I did the first part of the show, and he came off, and he just bowed, and he walked straight off the stage, down the steps, and jumped into a car. He wouldn't take a second bow. And the audience were all stood there, you know, stamping their feet.
Wanting more.
And he'd gone.
Wow.
So he came out with a great line and said, Roy Orbison has left the theatre.
There you go.
Where did I get that from? Yeah.
So, and now here we are in 2010 on a cruise ship, you know, like, you must have seen the entertainment industry in Australia change heaps over the last 40 years. You're saying there's a lot of work back then.
Yeah.
You know, what would your advice be to up-and-coming young comics or musicians?
Well, there's really a segregation now between us, you know. They say, oh, new wave comics, and I don't know what I am, whether I'm old wave or not, but I define it down to, if you make people laugh, you're a comic, you know. I don't put a title on what we are, sort of thing. We all work different, thank God for that, you know, but the kids today are exposed to different music and different comedy, and that's what they take. They accept that. Whereas my generation tended to watch what your parents watched, and you grew up liking what they liked. Well,
whereas now that seemed to be uncool.
That doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah.
No, parents very, very rarely nowadays appreciate the comedy and music of the children that they're bringing up.
Yeah.
Yet at one time it was a bond, you know, we had something in common with our parents. We enjoyed the same entertainment. Yeah. It wouldn't happen anymore. So that's sad in a way, but as long as there's an industry, and I mean, I watch some of these young comics, there's some very good ones, of course. And I watch the audience. I always watch the audiences. If they laugh, that's the answer.
Yeah.
That's the answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's too easy to be critical and say, oh, I couldn't laugh at him. If he's making somebody laugh, there's something good.
Something there, yeah. And just watching your show just now, you know, you still get that glint in your eye, Dave. You obviously still love it.
Yeah, once you get on that wave, your first minute, if you get a laugh, once you build your first minute, that's the most important part of it, right? once you get that first wave, you just jump on it and you can surf for the rest of it.
Do you think the boundaries have changed over the years? Because, you know, we're all, everything, you know, we're very politically correct now, and do you think you got away with a bit more in the 60s and 70s than what you can get away with now?
No, I think nowadays they get away with more. You know, they can push the limits now. A lot of subjects the younger comedians pick up that are borderline, but you know, people laugh at it, and I think it's a good thing, because that you listen to the radio now, and all these people on radio in the morning, they're hitting and degrading either politicians or the Australian system or the way of life, and all the time it's running down, and I think comedians are necessary to make people laugh about these situations, because during the war in England, where I was a little boy growing up and quite conscious of what was happening, the comedians were the ones you turn on the radio and they would make funny stories up about Hitler and that, and
social commentary.
Yeah, and you'd hear these funny songs and make you laugh. So you were starting to laugh at what was happening in the war, instead of crying all the time.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot of things to cry about.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So comedians were very important, and they still are today. You know, I always say to people, when you laugh, you use muscles in your body that you never use unless you laugh.
Yeah.
And people don't realise that. I mean, my wife had cancer 15 years ago, and I can remember the doctor said to me, he said, "What do you do for a living?" I said, "I'm a comedian." He said, "Great. Make her laugh every day." He said, "That'll cure her." And I thought he was joking, you know.
Yeah.
But it's true, if you can laugh and use them muscles, which you never use unless you laugh,
yeah,
it's a health aspect.
Oh, it makes you feel great.
Yeah, yeah,
you know?
Yeah.
Well, here's to laughter, Dave, because without it, we're out of work.
We're out of work. We'll be out.
So, awesome show tonight. I think it's time we went and grabbed a drink. Thank you very much for your time.
Good.
Dave Burke.
Nice to meet you, Mark. See you, folks.